Summer is nearly over, and parents like me are ready for their kids to return to the structure and learning of the school year. I had the opportunity to sit down with the new commissioner of the Department of Education, Mary Cathryn Ricker. I began by asking her if families will notice any significant changes as kids head back to the classroom.
I am really excited for the school year to start. I think students and their families are going to notice all sorts of things. With every school year comes new excitement, comes new things that school communities are doing on behalf of their students. I actually think one of the best ways of initially engaging families and for families to engage their school communities is actually asking that question. Whether it's an open house opportunity, perhaps it's a school tour, and just saying, you know, what will my child see differently this year? Or for students themselves to say, so hey, what's new, Ms. Ricker? And letting the school community themselves sort of unveil, reveal what it is they've been planning for students and their learning this year. I think we're going to have an opportunity as a state to see students come back to school to all sorts of opportunities given the sort of work educators have been doing this summer.
Schools received a funding boost, which basically means 2% and 2% on the formula for the next 2 years, in addition to a cap on the money that had been going to special education expenses. What does this mean for schools generally, and are different schools impacted differently?
I really appreciate you asking that question, because I do know there is some consternation that 2% and 2% just starts covering the cost of inflation. And so what is new this year around school funding was the work we did with the legislature and of course the governor and lieutenant governor's office to freeze special education funding, to put a down payment on the ambitions we have for meeting the needs of our students. And so going into this school year with an increase on the general education formula and a commitment to freeze that special education cross-subsidy, I'm looking forward to the impact that's going to have on our school communities. That is unique this year to previous years where we've seen increases in our general education funding. And that will affect different schools differently. If you are a school or a school system that has had a higher population of students with special needs, you may see that freeze on the special education cross-subsidy has that 2% really feeling like 2% in a way that a school district or a school community that had perhaps a lower percentage, a lower population of students with special needs has. And so that is one thing I'm going to be looking for as I'm visiting schools and school communities this year, is just what difference that down payment is going to make.
So in a sense, they're going to really get to feel this 2%. That's a big deal.
That's right. Well, that 2%, that meeting that cost of inflation will feel like 2% because of the attention to that special education cross-subsidy.
There's been a lot of concern about school safety. Can students put their fears to rest with the money that was allocated to increase school safety?
The best way to put your confidence in your school is to get to know your school and to make sure that students and their families are building relationships with the educators and the school leaders in their school. Students who feel seen and heard and who feel welcomed into their school are students who feel safe at school. And so being able to call attention to the sort of relationships that are getting built at that school community is often the thing that parents feel in their gut is one of those things that makes a parent feel comfortable as well with their students. Hearing about the school day, hearing of how a student was engaged in their school day, perhaps a conversation they had with their teacher, perhaps a conversation they had with their school principal or the paraprofessional working in their classroom. Those are the sorts of things that when parents hear about those relationships getting built, it makes us really excited for the school experience our children are having.
In a similar vein, there's growing awareness of the importance of mental health in helping students learn and helping students feel safe at school. What is being done to improve access to mental health services for students?
Yes, Now, educators and school leaders have been paying attention to the mental health needs of our students. It is part of that comprehensive strategy of a strong teaching and learning environment. Absolutely pays attention to the academic needs of students, the social and emotional needs of students, and the safe and welcoming needs of students. And mental health is a part of that. And what I really appreciate is that we are joined by a great cross-section of Minnesotans who also care deeply about the mental health needs of our students. And so I'm really proud of the work of the Department of Human Services this past legislative session, working on behalf of school-based mental health grants and to increase access to school-based mental health grants for our school communities across the state of Minnesota. We see the appreciation in our school communities for those school-based mental health grants, and we're seeing the way they're paying off for meeting the needs of our students as well.
Minnesota has not done as well as other states on closing the achievement gap. What steps are being taken to help minority students achieve better results?
So when we look at the sort of gaps our students have in their access to those academic needs and those social emotional needs and the safe and welcoming needs that they have, we take that very seriously, and educators and school leaders across the state take those seriously. So we are looking at several things, right? First, every student deserves an accomplished teacher. And so we are absolutely going to make sure that, and one of the goals I have is to expand access to accomplished teaching for all of our students across the state of Minnesota. That is one thing that will make a difference. Also making sure that we are looking at the needs our students have and making sure that we're setting that stage for that high quality teaching and learning environment, right? Making sure that we're meeting the students' academic needs and teaching to the state standards that we've established for all of our students. Making sure that we're meeting their social and emotional needs, and making sure that we're meeting the safe and welcoming needs of our students so that every student feels welcomed. Again, they are building relationships at school, they feel valued in their school community. Those are critical components to that high quality teaching and learning environment that means so much to me and means so much to students, families, and educators across the state of Minnesota. The other thing I would like to say is that one of the things I have noticed as I've had the chance to get into school communities is that we have school communities that have started to really make a difference at closing and eliminating the gaps that we're seeing in student learning. And I want to be that amplifier of those stories. I want to find out where things are working, what is working, and I want to be the person who shares that out so that schools who may be struggling with that same thing can learn from a school that is working on figuring it out. I want to be that amplifier. I want to give you an example of something else I've learned as I have had the chance to be in different school communities and learn from school leaders and practitioners. For example, in rethinking what a secondary experience should look like for our students. We have pockets of school communities incubating ideas for creating more engaging environments for our students, whether that is expanding career and technical education opportunities for our students, expanding partnerships in the community with different businesses, and so students can pursue industry credentials or mentorships, expanding access to high quality, rigorous coursework so that we see the same diversity in our student body in those high quality, rigorous courses like our advanced placement courses or international baccalaureate courses, or even in our college in the schools and PSEO. We have school districts incubating different ideas for what rethinking that secondary experience could look like. That's an example of where I want to learn what some of those most creative ideas are and want to pull them together so as a state of Minnesota we can say that here's an example of some really high quality engaging practices that really meet the needs of all of our students so that we can all learn from them and we can eliminate those gaps.
Governor Walz campaigned on making Minnesota the education state. In addition to closing the achievement gap, what other challenges remain that would prevent Minnesota from once again achieving its status as an education leader?
Yeah, you know, when I hear that we are going to be the education state, and when I think of the role I get to play in making us the education state again, I start with that teaching and learning environment, right? At the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, that teaching and learning environment between student and educator matters more than anything. And so I want to make sure that we are doing everything we can to invest in that teaching and learning environment. We make sure that that teaching and learning environment, student and educator, is surrounded by school leaders who are supporting that teaching and learning environment, where family engagement is an authentic part of that teaching and learning environment, and that we are really making sure that families are recognized and are honored for the role they play as first educators and as partners in that high quality teaching and learning environment. And that teaching and learning environment, those school leaders, those family engagement opportunities we create are also surrounded by everyone who cares deeply about the role our public schools play in their community, about the future that we are creating in that teaching and learning environment. And so I like to start there, and I think when we put our focus on the academic needs of our students in that teaching and learning environment, their social and emotional needs, and their safe and welcoming needs in that school environment, that puts us on the road to being the education state again.
Commissioner Ricker, thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me, and happy back to school, everyone.